So far, I've already made 2 videos about this subject. I made a video on the Great War itself and how everything happened and how everything went down, and I made a video about the Stormcloaks and how they were perceived as the bad guys, but in actuality, were they actually wrong? So today I'm going to make a video about the Empire, and I'm going to make this entire thing about all of them. So without further ado, I would like to say, here we go. If we're going to talk about the Great War and exactly how it started, we first have to talk about the reason why the Great War started in the first place, and that was because of Tiber Septim, also known as Scion of the Emperors, King of the Earth and Sky, Lord of Shining Hosts, Protector of Oathmen, Femen, and Yeomen, etc., etc., etc. Basically, the entirety of this story revolves around Tiber Septim, his conquering of the entirety of Tamriel, unification of Tamriel, creation of the Cyrodiilic Empire, and him descending to godhood and becoming the Ninth Divine. Talos had effectively started his entire journey while being a general under the command of the King of Falkreath in the Second Era. After his death, he effectively chose to unify the entirety of Tamriel under one banner, that being the Cyrodiilic Empire, and he did so by using his strategic military mind, effectively using the power of the Thu'um, using different variations of magic, and also on top of that, using a giant robot hidden inside of a mountain, so he could threaten to erase the entirety of the high elf race as we know it, because, for shiggles. In just over a couple of years, Talos and the King of Falkreath took over the entirety of the western side of Cyrodiil. They took over the Imperial City. Talos himself took over the entirety of Hammerfell, turned Morrowind into his own private breeding ground because he accidentally got somebody pregnant and, got the abortion immediately because he didn't want to screw with his legitimate heir, but that's a story for another day. Acquired the Numinium from Vivek, and then basically walked over to the Somerset Isles, threatening to exterminate their entire race if they didn't hand over everything that they had and didn't subjugate themselves to his rule. And upon conquering the Somerset Isles and thus conquering the entirety of Tamriel, he declared that a new age should begin. Thus, the Third Age started, and Tamriel began with their new Cyrodiilic Empire, in which Tiber Septim ruled for 38 years before ascending himself to godhood and becoming the Ninth Divine, known as Talos. Needless to say, the High Elves were not exactly happy about the fact that Talos had threatened to destroy their entire island, their entire culture, and their entire race, and also not exactly happy about the fact that this guy who did all that had just descended into godhood and become the Ninth Divine, and was effectively the god of all mankind when they thought of themselves as the superior culture and the superior race. So obviously, they had a problem. But everything would come to a head as the Great War would begin in Tamriel in 171 of the Fourth Era, and things got a little freaking complicated. During the time of 433 of the Third Era, Martin Septim, also known as the last Septim of the Septim bloodline, would fuse himself together and become the avatar of Akatosh, and became an enormous dragon wreathed in flame, and destroyed Dagon's physical body, thus ending the Oblivion Crisis and beginning the Fourth Era. Now, there's a big time jump here, so you better strap in, because in between the end of the Oblivion Crisis and the crowning of Titus Mende II at around 168 of the Fourth Era, a lot of stuff had changed throughout the entirety of the Empire. Valenwood and elsewhere were gone, succeeded by the Thalmor. The Black Marsh had been completely lost to Imperial rule since the Oblivion Crisis ended. Morrowind never fully recovered from the eruption of the Red Mountain, which laid waste to literally everything throughout the entirety of Morrowind, and the entirety of Hammerfell was plagued with infighting between crowns and forebears, with the only three nations actually being prosperous and peaceful being High Rock, Cyrodiil, and the realm of Skyrim. But in 171 of the Fourth Era, everything changed and everything went straight downhill. The Aldmeri Dominion rolled up into Cyrodiil, threatening a bunch of demands, including massive amounts of gold, tribute, dismantling the entirety of the Blades, moving their asses out of Hammerfell, and allowing them to take over the entirety of that country. And they effectively said no, which then resulted in them unloading a cart filled to the brim with the heads of every Blades operative in the entirety of every area where the Aldmeri Dominion had control over, which then resulted in the Aldmeri Dominion invading the entirety of Cyrodiil and taking over the Imperial City in just over a year. The Aldmeri Dominion, of course, being the cheating little bastards that they are, used a Zaedric artifact called the Orb of Vermina to effectively spy on literally everybody that they could at any given time, because that's how they operated. They use the orb to spy on General Tullius. They use the orb to spy on the Blades, on literally everybody that they can imagine, so they can figure out every battle plan, every strategy, and actively navigate themselves to go around those strategies so they could effectively negate any strategy that they would come across that would effectively halt their progress. It wouldn't be until a couple of years into the war that the forgotten hero from Elder Scrolls Legends, the mobile game, stole the Orb of Vermina and halted the progress of the Aldmeri Dominion, which allowed General Tullius to take over the Imperial City and thus inviting the White Gold Concordiant into play. In short, the Aldmeri Dominion would receive the entire southern section of Hammerfell. All of the blades would be dismantled. They would be allowed to have free access to all provinces, and there would be a ban on Talos worship throughout the entirety of Tamriel, thus reverting the 9 divines to the 8 divines, just like it was back during the Second Era. So the Aldmeri Dominion basically got everything they wanted, the Empire practically got nothing, and 25 years later a civil war would break out over the worship of Talos, and the Stormcloaks would fight against the Imperial Legion, and everything would very much go downhill from there. The Empire knows that they are going to have to fight the Aldmeri Dominion sometime in the future. That is just a fact. General Tullius knows that he needs to have the entirety of Skyrim unified to fight against the Aldmeri Dominion, and he knows that if they are not unified in every way, shape, and form, they're not going to stand a chance, and that's a big, big problem. Without a completely unified Skyrim and without a completely unified Empire, there is no way that they're going to be able to fight against the Aldmeri Dominion sometime in the future, whenever the actual Second Great War happens against the Aldmeri Dominion, and considering that they have entire control over the southern section of Hammerfell, the entirety of the war will be over very, very fast, or it'll be a long outstretched war that'll probably last even longer than the previous. So, in conclusion, like I've said throughout the entirety of these 3 videos, this entire subject is extremely complicated on multiple fronts, and I can see every reason as to why. In one hand, you have the reasoning of the actual Stormcloaks themselves. They have been worshipping Talos for well over 600 years. They want their independence, they want to be able to live for themselves, and they want to worship Talos by their own means without the Thalmor and without the Aldmeri Dominion basically breathing down their necks and murdering people just for simply worshiping one of the 9 divines. Not to mention the fact that there are many Nords throughout the entirety of Skyrim who think that the Imperial Legion and that the Empire in general are just weak because they are simply allowing Thalmor agents to walk across the entirety of Skyrim and murder whoever they want, basically for their own amusement or for the fact that they are worshiping a god that they don't like. And that since the Empire really doesn't have any desire to stop them from actually doing this, there's no point in actually expecting the Empire to really care about the Nord people or really to care about the fact that the Thalmor are stepping over everybody and wanting to kill everybody that they want to for their own amusement. Meanwhile, on the Imperial side, the entire job is basically to strengthen themselves and to enforce their ranks so they can fight against the Aldmeri Dominion later on down the line whenever they have an actual unified force to fight against the Aldmeri Dominion and to fight against the Thalmor. And without a unified front to actually fight against the Aldmeri Dominion, there's really no point in fighting them, because if they can't fight them with a unified front, then there's no point in actually doing anything about it, and they'll just allow the Aldmeri Dominion to conquer literally everything that they want to, and to destroy everything throughout the entirety of Tamriel, and take it over just like Talos once did back in the day. The Aldmeri Dominion basically doesn't care about the rights of anybody. They step over everyone, and the Empire can't do anything without risking a war with them, especially during a civil war, which would be extremely complicated and very detrimental to the cause of the Empire, and very detrimental to everybody throughout the entirety of the realms, especially Skyrim. So yeah, even though I can see the reasoning behind both factions, realistically it's always going to be up to Bethesda, and it's going to be up to Elder Scrolls 6 to tell us where exactly this is going to go and how this is going to play out for everybody. So until then, I guess I'll talk to you later. Maybe Elder Scrolls 6 will come out in the next 5 years. I have no idea. Until then, see ya.